Joining us now to analyze today's headlines is Chenjerai Kumanyika. He's an assistant professor of communication studies at Clemson University. Hi, Chenjerai.
Hi, how you doing?
Doing well, thanks for joining us. Protests rocked St. Louis, Missouri last night against the police killing of an 18-year-old African-American boy named Mansour Ball-Bey. Police arrested 9 people in an area not far from Ferguson. The fatal police shooting took place yesterday afternoon when officers say they were attempting to execute a search warrant. This is how NBC News described it. Quote, according to police, 2 officers were executing a search warrant at a home in a crime-plagued neighborhood. When 2 armed men fled out the back, the officers shot Mansour Ball-Bey, 18, after he turned and pointed a gun at them, police said. End of quote. One resident of the area told Associated Press what could have been done different to de-escalate rather than escalate. The police come in with an us-against-them mentality, and you've got to have the right kind of cops to engage in these types of neighborhoods. Well, Chenjerai, what do you make of this shooting? There isn't yet video documentation of anything, as it's very early, but any initial thoughts?
Well, I think that this is yet another example where we have police who are trying to execute something as simple as a search warrant and a person winds up dead. This points to the deep systemic problems in policing in this area that have now been documented by the Justice Department, and also the systemic problems that exist across the country. Now, protesters have also been victimized in terms of their response to this protest, also recently in their protests on the year anniversary of Michael Brown. So one other thing I just want to point out, we have this new police chief, Sam Dodson, and they started a community engagement team. But what I've learned from people on the ground is that one of the people heading the team is a police officer named Harry Dilworth, who's known as being a cop who's very oppressive to protesters with poor community relations. So, I don't know, things aren't looking very good.
And we'll certainly follow up on this story if more news comes out. 3 firefighters have died in Washington attempting to put out major wildfires plaguing the western state. They died last night near the town of Twisp, where major fires continue to burn and where residents have been evacuated from. The 3 were trapped when the winds changed direction. Governor Jay Inslee said he plans to declare a state of emergency in eastern Washington. He told press the current fires will exacerbate the ongoing housing shortages and economic troubles felt throughout the region. A total of 11 counties and 4 indigenous tribes are impacted by the fires. The U.S. Forest Service just released a report on the large number of fires in the U.S. and how they're increasing each year, and the report blames climate change for the increase. Chenjerai, shouldn't these 3 firefighters be considered casualties of climate change?
Absolutely. There was a National Federal Advisory Committee put together in 2009, and they released a report it's called the Global Change Research Program. And in 2009, they identified, increased risk of fire as climate continues to change, could add firefighting resources, and they basically recommended that firefighting resources and improving evacuation procedures and communication infrastructure was key. They also recommended that we're going to need regularly updated insights into what the latest climate science implies for locations, timing, potential severity of fire risks, and other types of social and economic institutions. Also, in the meantime, you have local organizations like National Firewise Communities, which is an interagency program that encourages wildfire preparedness, such as trying to create defensible space around residential structures. But ultimately, we're really going to have to start getting serious about climate change.
And finally, Donald Trump is embarrassing his party once again, this time by using the racist term anchor babies in a discussion on immigration. The blustering GOP presidential candidate used the term on Fox News to assert that he thinks children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants should not be considered citizens. While many Republicans fear Trump will chase off Latino voters, analysis of his plan compared to other GOP immigration plans finds little difference. Already, presidential candidate Scott Walker has signed on to Trump's idea of stripping citizenship from U.S.-born children of immigrants. According to the Washington Post, quote, Trump's immigration plan hews pretty closely to the Republican Party's existing platform. Its official plank of policy ideas, much of Trump's huge immigration plan should sound quite familiar. Well, should Trump, Chenjerai, be seen as an outlier or just openly saying what the rest of the GOP espouses but refuses to say out loud?
Well, I think this is the key question. People like to look at Trump as some kind of outlier or some kind of, or in some circles, people look at him as a clown. But I think we have to look at the tremendous support that Trump has. You know, defending undocumented immigrants really doesn't have much of an upside unless you actually care about Latino people, not just looking at them as voters. If you're only looking at them as voters, you know, the states that have a big Hispanic population and have big electoral college numbers like California, Texas, New York, New Jersey, they're not going to really be like swing states in the 2000 presidential election. And in the swing states, there's not huge Hispanic population. So it could be that the GOP is just willing to sacrifice these voters and you know, to galvanize its base. But let me also just say that when it comes to these kinds of statements, we know that like these deeply racist and problematic views, you know, political communication is a place where those kinds of ideas proliferate. If we even think back to the Southern strategy with Black people and things like this. So,
Chenjerai, thank you as always for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you.
Chenjerai Kumanyika is an assistant professor of communication studies at Clemson University. This is Uprising. We'll be right back.